Over the thousands of years that the concept of art has been alive, I think we've gathered some kind of preconceived ideas of what makes art beautiful to us, or specifically the word aesthetic, whether it's pleasing or not. Not long ago, I was rewatching another. It's an anime, not a particularly scary anime or the prettiest, but the key word is re-watching. See, there's something about this series and quite a lot of other series out there that just makes me feel a weird connection to what I'm seeing. It's halfway between nostalgia and a more varied emotion. For another, I actually feel quite cold when I watch the show, and I thought this was just kind of down to the weather in which I watched it. But even when I watched the series in the heat, in the summer, the exact same feelings still resonated with me. See, there's a distinct gloominess about the visuals that kind of affects me, and I mean, it's a horror, it's not a shock, but this kind of feels different. With the rain, the sound mix, and just overall style of the artwork, it feels genuinely visceral to me. And it's actually annoying because I can't put my finger on it. Or can I? This engagement with our psyche is not a mistake on the creator's part. In fact, you'll get this mixed feeling of satisfaction, nostalgia, or even sensory feelings from a lot of anime, films, TV, even games. In fact, games are probably some of the most immersive forms of media in which you could probably embrace anything that's going on. So why is this the case? Well, we're going to get into philosophy now, and I studied it in A-level, and frankly, it never left me. I'll make this really simple, and it may seem like it's going off track, but I promise it does tie together, and we will get back to the pretty stuff. But first, if we go back to ancient Greek philosophy, this concept derives from Aristotelian philosophy, meaning your boy, Aristotle. And if we look at art, there is the concept of mimesis, and I touched upon this sort of replicant theory in my Blue Period video, and there's aspects derived from the cave analogy, from Platoism in my Junji Ito video that comes into play here, though that's more on the study of the theory of forms, as opposed to beauty. It's essentially a theory which studies the root of art, how images are replicated from one another, which is what we might call inspiration. Go too far, and it's called plagiarism. Mimesis essentially encapsulates how artists interpret the world, pulling from pre-existing entities in order to shape it to their liking. And you see it everywhere. New art is just commonly the re-presentation of old ideas. Now, there is a study in art historiography called autotelism, and essentially it's to justify art for the sake of its own beauty. What this is basically saying is art doesn't need a larger moral purpose. It simply is just there just to be there, to exist for its own sake, and there's nothing really more than that. And this idea was essentially made to reject utilitarianism, which was made by Jeremy Bentham, who essentially tried to optimize the human race and look at things from a very logistical perspective. And not many people liked Bentham. His ideas just came across as really robotic, and one of these people who sort of fought against him was Immanuel Kant, who proposed the idea of aestheticism. And this essentially means for something to exist, just to be beautiful. So if you're scrolling on Pinterest or Instagram and you see a pretty aesthetic such as Dark Academia or cottagecore or stills from Ghibli films or grunge, who does grunge, right? Who's this cringy fucker? And you just like how things look without really needing to justify why you like it, well, you have Kant to thank for that. Fun fact, Kant was a bit racist. But moving on, see, having traditional art, so paintings and things, to be aesthetic is quite semi-dimensional if you think about it. See, back when aesthetics was first coined, it mostly related to sculptures, paintings, and literature, but now we have a whole new dimension to work with, and this is called audio-visual media. Art nowadays can be quite multi-dimensional. We have so many means of engaging with an audience, and one of the biggest things is sound design. Lo-fi music can be calming, piano songs, the sounds of rain. There's a reason rain complements a lot of imagery, and it gives you that cold, maybe nostalgic sensation, or maybe it just helps you sleep. It's because your mind and, interestingly, your body in itself reacts positively to it. See, whatever feeling you get, you can't deny that there is a level of beauty to it. And this sort of raises the question, it's not just visual imagery that can be aesthetic, but I think sound in itself can be aesthetic too. But I talk about sound more in this video. So how is anime in particular so aesthetically pleasing? And I'm not saying all anime is, but there are things that lean towards anime which just enhances it that much more. And there are a lot of factors which can be universally shared between anime and film. For starters, I found the most aesthetic things are things that have actually survived the test of time. There's a timeless beauty in aged footage, and I think we glorify things that are no longer of mainstream standard. And this exact same thing happens with like fashion trends. You know, when everyone's sort of dressed up in the same way, no one is like special anymore, and because we live in a very individualist society now as opposed to a long time ago, people are embracing new things, and that's why people almost wear older clothes, if you will, to feel a bit more connected to maybe the past, or just have a bit more texture and more personality going on. Because if everyone's wearing the same thing or doing the same thing, then everyone's the same. Or at least that's like a shared mindset of a good few people nowadays. Film and traditional drawing and paintings are the best example of this because it provides the image with a texture that we no longer commonly have. And then there's colour. See, colour can be massively manipulated in anime. And we're talking about not just colour, but light, like physics and, you know, physics in general. It's a lot more malleable when you're working with a sort of fake environment. You're creating it yourself, as opposed to live action films, which require so much more work in order to create the sort of imagery you want to create. A common example of like a really pretty live action style is Wes Anderson. His colour palette and use of symmetry hits all the marks you need for something to be aesthetically pleasing. And if you look at Children of the Sea, there's a similar attention to stylization, except when you're in the realm of animation, you can emphasize the drawing style too, and you can give your work a painterly effect. I mean, if you look at like Isao Takahata's work, or even new work such as Shinkai's work, all of his visuals are gorgeous and retain that almost traditional style of painting but adopting new technical methods. And this goes all the way back to the works of old. I mean, oil paintings can be dated back to like the 7th century AD by like Buddhist artists who are located in Afghanistan. They were the sort of first lot that were using oil because water just, you know, kind of faded after a while. And this was before it was revolutionized by the Dutch. And all of these styles still exist today, and I think that speaks volumes on their beauty and how it can just last throughout time. And this is just a repercussion of immense skill and patience. And going back to anime, this principle of beauty remains the same, from composition to framing to colour to lighting. Anime is a dimension which has far greater leniency in blending with traditional art and new techniques, and this is all in order to make us feel connected. For someone like me to delve into the meaning of things, I think it's actually really nice to just sort of sit back and appreciate art for just being pretty. It's not often you get to just do that. Like, there just doesn't need to be a reason for it. And I know a lot of elements within art can imply certain things. This is the whole principle of mise-en-scène, place on screen, where you can speak your themes through the visuals. But the visuals alone, you know, in terms of aesthetics, beauty is just it. It doesn't need to show off, it just is there. And a lot of anime looks gorgeous because of their flexibility to adhere to what we consider traditionally beautiful. Like everything, there is a counterpoint, and there's a bit of a can of worms with beauty. I mean, corporations can utilise and weaponise this idea of pretty imagery to entice people in, and this isn't new, you know, this has been done for years. We could look at the really new rise of stylistic trends, and how certain aesthetics can possess certain qualities. For example, if we look at core again, this concept of fantasy core could idealise disassociation from reality. I mean, go into dark academia, again another new thing. It could be supporting the concept of middle-class elitism. A lot of these have underlying themes, and it's not traditionally what aesthetics was previously known to be as. But it's not to say you have to accommodate these themes or personalities. You can do what you want, it's all about personal preference. If people want to dress a certain way or a certain aesthetic just to look nice, that's fine, you know, go for it. If people like watching things just because it looks nice, go for it. I don't think we should attach ourselves too much to the personality side of things, because I think it sort of takes away from individualism in a sense, and sort of puts us under an umbrella term of aesthetics and their corresponding personalities, which I think has taken the whole idea of beauty and aesthetics out of context and turned it into almost a trend. I kind of avoid it when personality traits come into play. I think it's something that should be left in the visual medium for us to sort of sit back and say, oh, that looks nice. Because otherwise I think this would take away from your true personality, and no one likes being stuck under an umbrella. And yeah, I've pointed out a few things that the majority might agree on in terms of agelessness and things we'd expect to be universally aesthetic. But as we know, beauty is subjective. Some people might think Duchamp's fountain is aesthetic, some people might think Demon Slayer is aesthetic. For me, I just kind of found another makes me feel kind of cold. Now, is that aesthetic? To me it is. And that's the beauty of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new, feel free to subscribe, it would mean a lot. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. It's a very, very big milestone, but I think it will be awesome, and I actually have a really funny idea planned out for, if I do hit it. So yeah, feel free and go through it. I put a lot of effort in, and I love doing this, so take care.